There is a mistake that almost every gardener learns right from the start. The idea that the soil must be tilled every year. Every spring, the same scene repeats itself. Machines come out of the sheds. Engines start roaring in the gardens as if it were the official ritual of the season. The soil is turned over, pulverized and spread out. The ground looks dark, loose, and seemingly perfect. For a few days, everything seems ideal. A clean plot ready for planting. But a few weeks later, something strange happens. Weeds start sprouting again. First, a few plants appear, then dozens come up at once. In a short time, the garden turns into a green carpet, weeds that grow faster than any vegetable. Then the summer heat arrives and the soil changes again. The once soft earth transforms, hardens, and forms a crust on the surface. When you water, the water doesn't soak in. It runs off as if falling on stone. At that moment, the usual solution appears, bringing out the machine again to till everything, or grabbing the hoe and starting to fight, pulling weeds, cutting roots, and breaking up the soil. Without realizing it, you have entered an endless cycle. Till, plant, pull weeds, and repeat. Many people believe that gardening is just like this, a constant battle against the soil. But there is an important question that almost no one asks. If tilling the soil were so necessary, why doesn't nature do it? Think of a forest area or an abandoned corner of your land. No one tills the soil there. No machine works that ground. And yet huge trees grow. Strong plants appear every year. If you brush aside the leaves on the ground, you will find something interesting. The soil is almost always soft, even though it has never been tilled. It also stays moist much longer, even when the rest of the land is dry. Then another important question arises. How does that soil stay fertile on its own? The answer lies in how nature works. It builds the soil from the top down. Leaves fall all year round. Branches and plant debris accumulate. That organic matter stays on the surface without being buried or mixed in. Then the invisible workers step in. Insects, fungi, and millions of microorganisms. But above all, earthworms, the true engineers of the soil, spring into action. They drag the organic matter downward, creating tunnels in all directions. These tunnels allow the soil to breathe and let water penetrate deeply. Over time, the soil becomes a living sponge, full of channels and organic matter. Now think about what happens when we use a hoe or a machine to till the soil. All those tunnels are destroyed, the soil structure is broken, the fungal networks that retain moisture disappear, and the biology has to start all over again from scratch. And there is still another hidden problem, something almost no one notices. The soil contains millions of dormant seeds, weed seeds waiting for their chance. When we till the soil, we bring those seeds to the surface. There they find light and oxygen, exactly what they need to germinate. That is why tilled gardens have so many weeds. The preparation work itself activates those seeds. Now imagine a different method, a system that does not rely on tilling the soil, a garden that improves every year instead of always starting from scratch. That is the principle of permanent beds, a simple way of working with the soil. The core idea is very simple. Stop constantly disturbing the soil. But for this to work, there is a fundamental rule, a rule that completely changes the garden. There are places to step, and there are places to plant. These two spaces must never mix and must never occupy the same ground. In traditional gardens, we step everywhere. We step on the same soil where the plants grow. Every step compresses the earth, squeezing the air out from between the particles. That destroys the earthworm tunnels and turns the soil into a hard block. In permanent beds, we do the opposite. We create fixed pathways for walking and fixed zones for planting that are never stepped on. The pathways can be stepped on without any problem. They handle all the movement in the garden, but the beds become protected zones, soil that will never be compacted. Over time, something interesting happens. The soil starts to improve on its own. Roots create natural channels. Earthworms expand those tunnels. Water begins to infiltrate easily, and the soil stays soft. After a few years, you can stick your hand into the earth and feel the loose soil deep down, not because you worked harder, but because you stopped destroying the structure. Before building those beds, there is another important decision, choosing the right spot for the garden. Many people put the garden too far from the house, and that creates a silent problem. The farther away the garden is, the less attention it receives. Ideally, the garden should be close to the kitchen, in a place you see every day. When you see the garden often, you end up taking care of it naturally. Also, choose a spot with plenty of sun, at least 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. Then mark the first bed on the ground without trying to set up a huge garden. A width of about 90 centimeters works well. It lets you reach the center without stepping inside. The length can vary, but start small to learn the process. Now comes the interesting part. You are not going to dig the soil, nor remove the grass that is already there. It will become part of the system. Instead of digging, we are going to cover the ground using a technique called sheet mulching. Everything starts with a simple material, ordinary cardboard. Use plain brown cardboard without glossy inks and remove any plastic tape and stickers. Place the cardboard directly over the grass, covering the ground completely. Each piece should overlap with the next so that no light gets through. That layer acts as a barrier. The grass stops receiving light. Without light, it slowly dies and begins to decompose. At the same time, the cardboard absorbs moisture and starts to soften. Earthworms and microorganisms begin to consume it, turning that layer into food. Before continuing, it is important to wet the cardboard thoroughly so it conforms to the ground. You have now created the base of the bed, without digging and without tilling the soil. But the fertile soil is not ready yet. It will be built in the following layers. And this is exactly where the transformation happens, when we start building the soil from the top down. Now that the cardboard covers the entire area, we have created the base soil of the new bed. The grass underneath slowly begins to die, but it is not being wasted. It transforms into food, the first ingredient of the new soil. Now we need to create the next layer, the layer that will feed all the biology. That layer is made with coarse organic matter, a light material full of fibers. It can be dry straw. It can be shredded dry leaves. It can also be old hay or plant debris from the garden. The important thing is not the perfect material, but the quantity. Spread that organic matter over the cardboard, forming a thick layer, about 20 to 25 centimeters. It might seem exaggerated at first. Many people look at that pile of material and think they have overdone it, but in reality, that layer serves an essential function. It will act like a giant sponge. During the summer, that sponge absorbs water and releases moisture little by little. That natural reservoir greatly reduces watering, especially in the hottest months. Now we reach the next layer, the layer where the plants will grow. Here we use well-rotted compost, a rich, dark substrate. Spread about 10 to 15 centimeters of compost, completely covering the organic matter layer. After spreading the compost, the bed begins to take shape. It will be higher than the original ground, like a small mound of fertile earth. That height is not a problem. In fact, it brings several advantages. Raised beds drain water better and warm up earlier in the spring. That lets you plant earlier in the season without waiting for the soil to dry out completely. Now it is worth remembering an essential rule. Never step on that new bed. All the work we have done depends on that, keeping the soil loose at all times. The pathways around the bed can be compacted, but the bed must remain intact. If necessary, you can mark the pathways with wood chips or straw. That helps keep the space tidy and reduces weeds in the pathways. Now that the bed is built, the time has come to plant. One of the biggest advantages of this system is that it works from day one. You don't have to wait months to start growing. Seeds can be sown directly into the compost, just like transplant seedlings. The compost provides plenty of nutrients and also retains moisture well. For the first few days, the bed will seem very light, almost too spongy, but that is part of the process. Everything will settle naturally. Rain and gravity will settle the layers a bit without destroying the soil structure. Meanwhile, something invisible is happening. The biology starts to work. Earthworms come up from deep in the soil, attracted by the organic matter. They pass through the now softened cardboard and begin dragging material downward. Each earthworm creates new tunnels, improving air and water circulation. Microorganisms also spring into action, slowly breaking down the organic matter. That decomposition releases nutrients right where the roots need them. After a few weeks, the bed changes. The height begins to drop, and then the organic matter layer starts to decompose, turning into fertile soil. At the same time, plant roots grow, exploring the different layers. First, they pass through the compost, then they find the decomposing organic matter. That zone is very rich in nutrients and also retains a lot of moisture. During the summer, that makes a huge difference, especially in dry periods when other gardens need constant watering. Permanent beds retain moisture much longer. That happens because the organic matter acts like a sponge, storing water inside the soil. As the months go by, the system stabilizes. The bed becomes more compact, but inside it remains soft, full of subterranean life. Now there is another important detail, something many beginners forget. Never leave the soil bare. Bare earth loses life very quickly. When the sun shines directly on the soil, it heats the surface too much. That kills sensitive microorganisms and dries out the top layer of the soil. To prevent this, we use mulch, a protective layer over the bed. Straw works very well. Dry leaves also do the job. Spread a light layer around the plants, covering the bare soil. That mulch reduces evaporation, keeping the moisture in much longer. It also prevents weeds from germinating easily by blocking light at the surface. Over time, that mulch also breaks down, adding more organic matter to the system. This way, the soil keeps improving without the need to till anything. Now let's talk about maintenance because that is where this system truly shines. In traditional gardens, the soil is constantly depleted. Plants remove nutrients with every harvest. Then we try to fix it by applying fertilizers all at once. In permanent beds, we do it differently. We feed the soil continuously. Every time a crop finishes, we add a new layer of compost. There is no need to dig or mix, just spread it over the surface. That technique is called nutritional mulching, a simple way to renew the soil. The rain helps carry the nutrients downward, and the earthworms do the rest. This way, fertility remains balanced without disturbing the soil structure. There is also a habit that is worth changing, pulling plants up by the roots. When a crop finishes, many people pull up the entire plant. That removes important roots and destroys channels within the soil. Instead of that, do something different. Cut the plant off at ground level. Leave the roots where they are. They will continue to feed the system. As they decompose, they create new underground channels. Those channels help water infiltrate and also facilitate the growth of the next roots. Thus, each crop paves the way for the next one. Over time, the soil becomes highly structured, almost like a living sponge. That is the secret of permanent beds, creating a soil that works for you. But the most impressive benefits only appear after a few years. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about now. What happens when the system matures? After the first year, something interesting happens. The soil begins to show clear signs of change. Plants grow more vigorously, and the earth becomes increasingly dark. That darkening is not just about appearance. It indicates that there is more organic matter. Organic matter is the heart of fertility. It feeds all subterranean life. The more organic matter there is in the soil, the more active the invisible ecosystem becomes. Earthworms increase in number, and beneficial insects begin to appear. Microscopic fungi create huge networks connecting the roots of different plants. Those networks help transport nutrients and also distribute moisture throughout the soil. Over time, the soil acquires a special texture, loose, granular, and full of life. When you grab a handful of that earth, it crumbles easily in your hands. That texture is called living structure, and it is what makes a soil truly fertile. Now think again about the traditional method where the soil is tilled every year. Every time that happens, all that structure is destroyed. The biology has to start from scratch, as if the soil had been reset. In permanent beds, the opposite happens. The structure is reinforced year after year. That creates a very powerful effect. The garden improves over time. The first year, the result is already good. The second year is even better. But by the fifth year, the difference becomes impressive. The soil begins to retain water for much longer, even during dry periods. While other gardens suffer from the heat, permanent beds keep producing. The roots reach deep moisture reserves, protected by the accumulated organic matter. That greatly reduces the need for watering. In some cases, it almost eliminates it. Another curious phenomenon begins to occur. the amount of weeds drops significantly. At first, some still appear, especially in the early years, but after a while they become rare, and that has a simple explanation. The soil contains a seed bank, millions of seeds waiting to germinate. When the soil is constantly turned, new seeds rise to the surface, receive light, and begin to grow, creating a new generation of weeds. In permanent beds, the soil is left untouched. Those seeds remain buried. Over time, the seeds on the surface germinate and end up being removed or smothered. After a few years, that bank is depleted, leaving very few viable seeds. That is why well-managed old gardens have very few spontaneous weeds. Keeping the soil stable generates that effect, a natural reduction in weed pressure. That completely transforms the work in the garden. Maintenance becomes minimal. Instead of long sessions pulling weeds, you make small corrections from time to time. A few minutes of attention a week are enough. Another advantage appears in early spring, when the weather is still unstable. In conventional gardens, the soil becomes waterlogged, a cold mud that is difficult to work with. Permanent beds behave differently. They drain water much better. The organic matter keeps the soil structured, even after heavy rains. That means the soil dries sooner and can be worked earlier. While other gardens are still waiting for the soil to settle, you can already start planting. You just have to pull back the mulch, make a small hole for the seed, place the seed in the soil, and cover it again with the straw without digging, without tilling. That early start to the season can significantly increase annual production because more crop cycles can fit within the same space. Now let's talk about winter, a season often forgotten in soil management. When winter arrives, many people abandon the garden, leaving the beds completely exposed. But bare soil suffers a lot, especially with heavy rains. Water can wash away important nutrients and compact the soil surface. Therefore, the ideal approach is to protect the beds in winter by creating a natural cover. That can be done in two ways. The first is to sow cover crops. Plants like oats or vetch work well. They grow during the cold season. Their roots protect the soil and add organic matter. The second option is even simpler. Cover the soil with dry leaves. A generous layer acts as insulation, protecting the underground biology. Beneath that cover, the soil remains active. Even on cold days, microorganisms keep working slowly, breaking down organic matter. When spring returns, the soil is already ready for planting. That continuous cycle creates stability and reinforces the system year after year. Over time, the garden becomes very reliable, producing food consistently. Even in years with difficult weather, it keeps producing. That kind of security is something very valuable, especially in today's world. Knowing that you can produce part of your own food directly in your garden does not depend on expensive machines or complicated fertilizers. It only depends on understanding how the soil works and working alongside nature. That is the true goal of permanent beds, to create a simple and resilient system, a system that improves over time instead of degrading. But there is one last important piece of advice, especially for those who are just starting out. Do not try to transform the entire garden all at once. That usually leads to frustration. Start small, just one bed. Choose a simple area, maybe 2 or 3 meters long. Build the bed calmly using the layers we have seen. Observe what happens throughout the season. Pay attention to the soil. Watch how it changes over time. See how the plants respond. That first bed will be your laboratory, your learning space. When you see the results, confidence comes naturally. Then building the second bed becomes easy, and then the third. Little by little, the garden grows without rushing and without exhausting you. And one day you realize something interesting. The garden almost works by itself. The soil is alive, the plants are strong, water stays in the earth much longer, and weeds appear less and less. At that moment, the garden stops being a struggle and becomes a collaboration. A collaboration between you and nature, where each part does its job, and it all starts with a simple decision. Stop fighting against the soil and start building a living soil that will keep improving year after year. If this way of growing has changed how you view the soil, then you have already started thinking like a true gardener. Because gardening is not about dominating the earth, it is about learning to collaborate with it. And when you do, the garden finally begins to thrive. If this story has changed the way you see the soil in your garden, subscribe and like our channel. We are unearthing the wisdom that others tried to hide. Cultivate the future. The next treasure will open soon.